Hello and welcome to the European Parliament. Now, you decide who comes here. There's an election in June. We've come here to find out what its members do and to debate if it's worth it for the West Country. With me are Glyn Ford from Labour, Graham Watson from the Liberal Democrats, with Giles Chichester from the Conservatives and Nigel Farage from the UK Independence Party. I'm going to start firstly on the sometimes uncomfortable subject, salaries and expenses. Giles Chichester, they've often been controversial, in your case particularly so. So many changes have been made and are still being made. Why, after so many years, have you still not got it right as an institution?
Well, you have to bear in mind the complexity of 27 member states, different systems coming together. What was appropriate for 6 member states a long time ago is no longer appropriate for 27. But what I think the electorate should feel reassured about is that the systems that will be in place after the election will be pretty rigorous
but isn't that what we're saying? We're going to be getting better, and haven't you been saying that for a long time?
No, I don't think I've been saying it for a long time, and frankly it's for the authorities of the Parliament to put the right measures in place.
Nigel Farage, are they doing so?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by this. I mean, don't forget the European Union itself has not had the accounts signed off for the last 14 years in a row. And the reality is that we're one of the few countries that actually cares about this. Most countries in Europe, particularly the southern countries, take the view that politicians are corrupt anyway, so you may as well have a system in which they can make some money. I mean, the honest truth is, this is the only job I've ever had in my life where the harder I work, the less I earn. The expenses are totally skewed to making MEPs spend as much time in Brussels and as little time back with their constituents as possible.
Let's just put this across. Glyn, first of all, you've been here for 25 years, I think you're right in saying. The public are cynical, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. But in a sense, they have a right to be about, if you want, politicians. But what we're trying to do is to put our house in order, to make sure that it can't happen in future. We have a new salary regime, we have a new expenses regime that are coming into place following the elections.
But I mean, same question to you, Graham Watson. Why has it taken so long to get this straightened out? Why isn't it worked out yet?
Well, because a lot of people have had a vested interest in the system continuing. I am proud of the fact that it was under a Liberal president, the first we'd had for many years, that we started to get this system sorted out, and it's thanks to Liberal pressure we've now done it. But to set the facts straight, Nigel Farage is wrong, because 10 days ago, the finance ministers did sign off the European Union's account. Admittedly, for the first time in many years, we are rather better than we were, or than the situation in some national governments, including, for example, the Department of Work and Pensions in Britain.
It's not entirely up to us. I mean, the member statute was held up by member states. It's not necessarily the Parliament. The absurdity of our trekking to Strasbourg every month is not because of the European Parliament. It was actually John Major in the 1992 Edinburgh Summit that actually agreed that we're going to do this in perpetuity. So don't blame the MEPs for some of the problems we actually face.
Doesn't that sum up? I mean, when people talk about reform in the European Union, you've just admitted it. There's nothing we can do to change the monthly trek to Strasbourg because it's in the treaties. This is a very difficult set of institutions to reform. It really is.
That is not. You two. Your two parties would have us out of the damn thing. Our two parties, Labour and the Liberal Democrats, would keep us in.
He wants to take us out.
I do.
We Conservatives wish to reform, and we have worked consistently towards that end. So you cannot level that accusation against the Conservative Party.
The European Union is there. We've got to make it work, and we're stronger in it than we would be outside.
Can I just ask, though, the British public don't seem to hold this place in high esteem, and sometimes when they see this kind of squabbling going on, the same arguments being repeated time and time again, it doesn't do much to increase.
No, this is not squabbling, this is political debate. And the vote on June the 4th is about people making choices for the kind of Europe they want. Now, some people may want us to leave the European Union, but they will vote for UKIP. Some people may want, if you want, a Tory vision, and some people want a vision from the Labour Party where, in a sense, we are interested in protecting workers' jobs, we're interested in protecting people, we're interested in deepening and strengthening the union in a particular way.
Looking across the agenda, a vast array of things. You do votes and all sorts of things, but the accusation is made that this is little more than a talking shop. Your powers are sometimes peripheral, sometimes trivial.
Well, the accusation may be levied, but speaking for myself and the committee I serve on, we deal with legislation. We're in co-decision with the Council. That means we, the Parliament, have the power to amend and improve legislation. And right now we're working on energy and telecoms package to that end. And in living memory, we've rejected proposals from the Commission. I organised one 5 years ago when we rejected a proposal for a directive. It doesn't happen very often. but then you could say they don't often make proposals that really are a solution looking for a
Graham Watson,
problem.
you want to you're standing for President of this Parliament. Are you happy with the amount of power it has and the function that it has?
I would like to see the Parliament have more power. Its power has been gradually growing, and we have the power to hold the European Commission to account.
Move on to the big subject which is dominating politics internationally at the moment, and certainly back in the UK, the recession, the economy, what's happening financially across the world. Do you think that the European Union and this Parliament, I'll start with Glenn Ford, is having a good recession?
I think it is, and I think the recession would be far worse in Europe if it wasn't for the fact we're united within the European Union. We managed to take common action, and can we imagine if we'd been stuck out on our own? Can you imagine the situation Ireland would have been in if it hadn't been part of the European Union, and for that matter the United Kingdom? No one's suggesting we can solve this problem in medium-sized nation-states like the United Kingdom. We're going to solve it together, the European Union, the United States, China, Japan, together, not separately. The notion that we're going to be better being on our own.
There's no evidence. There is no evidence that Ireland would have gone bankrupt if she hadn't been part of the European Union. There is no evidence.
Why is Iceland
there is no
desperate
evidence.
to join the EU when
the
it's a very
opinion
similar
polls in
position
Iceland,
to
the
Ireland?
opinion polls in Iceland show that since the collapse of their economy, there are now more Icelandic people opposed to joining the European Union than there ever were
there
before.
may be,
the fact is, we're in a recession.
The majority want to
we're in a
join
recession.
the EU urgently,
Your leader,
fast track,
they
quickly.
don't. They don't. Their politicians might, their people don't. But it was your leader 2 years ago that talked about British jobs and British workers. We now have a situation where the unemployment figures in Britain were up 300,000 last year, but where an extra 175,000 foreign workers got new jobs in Britain.
And how many British workers are working elsewhere in the European Union?
Less than 25%.
Because exactly.
Less than 25% of the number that work in Britain.
The strikes in the linear
Now,
oil refinery
surely,
were headlines in the Italian press saying British workers should be sent home from Italy. The beggar by neighbour policy doesn't get us
in a
anywhere.
recession,
What we need
should
to do
be
is
able to
protect
put British
standards
workers
of
first.
living
No.
for workers through a revision and post-American
You're acting against British workers,
What's
all of you.
clear here, guys,
all
is
of you.
that we are much stronger if we're in this together.
Why?
Recession
Why?
or boom, because we
Where's the
trade with
evidence?
each other, we
With one
exchange
caveat.
much more than we did,
We don't need
and
the
there
European
is
Union to trade,
solidarity
Graham.
in numbers in the kind of world we live in today.
No, I'm
That's
sorry.
why Britain will
Justice,
stay in.
you've got
Yeah.
in short, what's the most disappointing thing about being an MEP? Nigel
The
Farage?
most disappointing thing is when we fight successful campaigns in countries like France and Holland and Ireland, and the people stand up and say no, this institution ignores it.
Okay.
In order to get that common foreign policy, we need the Lisbon Treaty. And a country holding the presidency ought to be moving every rock possible out of the way to get that ratification through. Moving every rock possible out of the way to get that ratification through. Moving every rock possible out of the way to get that ratification through.
I don't think you get it, do you? The peoples of Europe do not want deeper political integration. That's why in France they said no, and in Holland they said no, and in Ireland they said no. And if we had a vote in Britain, an overwhelming majority of us would have said no. What price democracy? To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.